It's March 18th of 2020 today, and millions of Americans are finding themselves socially isolated from the rest of society in an effort to avoid the recent coronavirus outbreak. In the midst of all this chaos, people have turned to a rather old video of a TED Talk in April of 2015 in which Bill Gates seemingly predicted the very outcome and prerequisite of the outbreak we're suffering from today. Well, Bill Gates in the video predicted that if there was no system or protocol in place to deal with such an epidemic or pandemic in the future, then we'd all front the costs. But what exactly are the predictions that he made, and how do they relate to the current coronavirus outbreak? First, we have to analyze the actual requirements of the epidemic that would require it being with millions killed and hundreds or tens, if not hundreds of millions infected. First, the virus would have to be highly infectious. It would be able to travel to very highly and densely populated places without actually having the owner in critical condition. And three, it would essentially have to be able to incapacitate a large sector of the population. Now, we have to relate that to the coronavirus that's happening right now. It is highly infectious. It is able to actually spread its disease before and after a host shows symptoms, and it is able to directly affect a sort of sector of the population, and it spreads very quickly. In fact, the reason the coronavirus is so dangerous is that it can actually has the capability of spreading even days or weeks after the host or patient stops feeling symptoms and is considered healthy, relatively. But the thing is, the mortality rate is significantly lower than viruses or just plain diseases in the past, making it such that it cannot incapacitate a large sector of the population in the time that it needs to in order to actually cause the sort of disaster scenario that Bill Gates was warning us. Well, next we must look at the prerequisite of the epidemic, since, there are some similarities and differences in the prerequisite that Bill Gates described and the ones that we faced actually today. Bill Gates said it all. Essentially, for the Ebola pandemic or epidemic, we did not have a system or protocol in place that would prevent or slow a spread of a disease or virus like Ebola. And it ended up with tens of thousands being killed, specifically just 10,000. And because of this, those people have been laid in critical condition for longer than ever needed. Similarly, the coronavirus has not been met with a sort of system, since we didn't have a system in place to begin with. And the coronavirus, it has shook the foundations of countries around the world, including ours. We didn't have the supplies needed for such an epidemic, and because of that, we've had to flatten the curve and lengthen the actual time of the pandemic, but essentially make it such that our healthcare system and healthcare systems around the world can actually bring in everyone who needs to be brought in if they're in some sort of critical condition. Bill Gates brilliantly warned us that if we didn't do anything, tens of millions would die. But how does this relate to the prerequisite of what we're dealing with right now? Well, essentially, it's been around 3 months, and we haven't seen as many cases as many had predicted in the beginning. The very same situation that caused Ebola to spread so quickly is really what's impacting us right now. Finally, the outcome of the epidemic. Many simulations that were cited predicted millions dead in a very short amount of time. Currently, it's around 3 months, as I stated earlier, with the virus being in place, originating in China. Since then, there have been 218,000 cases and almost 9,000 deaths, as of March 18th, of course. The virus has spread much slower than predicted and with a lesser impact. That being said, the worst is likely yet to come. Growth around the world is increasing exponentially, with Italy, France, Spain, and even places like New York being in shutdown, just complete lockdown, and some might even say the border of anarchy. And with that, we have to take this very seriously so that Bill Gates' prediction doesn't come to fruition. We don't want tens of millions dead. We don't want hundreds of millions incapacitated by this virus, and governments around the world have been working to really contain this virus. Well, as of that, I am Nick J, and that has been my sort of relation for Bill Gates' prediction with the Tedx video that's recently come to surface versus the actual coronavirus pandemic that we face today. I wish you all a very safe evening. They're finding themselves socially isolated from the rest of society.